Good morning, engineering and manufacturing educators and the manufacturing engineering educator exchange, the educators toolbox. Sorry, a little fuzzy in my brain, just got done working out. It's about 48 here in Indiana, and getting ready to go my cold plunge there, getting all ice and down, and kind of had a thought as I was getting ready to get in. I was talking about failure, and especially as a teacher. I've been going through this kind of sober October dieting. I like to challenge myself a couple times a year. And this year I decided to cut out adult beverages for 30 days, as well as trying to go as low carb and as low sugar as possible, and trying to work out every day. Been a few times I've failed. It's been a slight fail, but it's been a fail nonetheless. So I was thinking about that as a teacher. What does failure look like as a teacher, and why do we have this anticipation and expectation from teachers to be 100% successful 100% of the time? I have failed many times as a teacher, trying to do different things, classroom management, trying to do different things with that. Back when I was teaching a few years ago, and I was a mini teacher out here, been teaching a lot longer than I was, but when I was teaching high school tech ed, a lot of times we were getting that, hey, I have nowhere else to put these kids. You're a coach. You do well with these this is the jobs these type of kids are going to have, so we're going to put them in your classroom. And having to deal with that as a young teacher, trying to do innovative and cool things. We have a large class of misbehaving students. I come to like those type of students over time, but right off the bat, getting a class of 20 students that were not wanting to be there, checked out there half the time, got other issues going on. It was really hard as a first year, second year, third year teacher to deal with those things. But again, as time went on, I actually come to like those students and enjoyed being around them, and enjoyed getting them to see the aha moment and like, oh, I can do this too, or getting them out of a situation they were in. But I think also understanding that it's okay to fail in what you're doing. I had, I was trying to rethink a series of projects within a course when I was at Ivy Tech Community College. And the idea that I had was, well, I'm gonna buy these small Briggs & Stratton engines. I'm gonna have the students take them apart so they can learn how to use a tool. They learn a little more about the engine, disassembling it, and we're gonna draw different parts of that engine, and we're gonna reassemble it as a team. Well, there's a lot of things I didn't take into consideration. One, we need tools. Two is we need a place to take them apart. Luckily, we had redone our lab, and we called it the Idea Lab, Innovation Design Engineering Architecture Lab. So we had some space to do that, but I still needed some totes and some things to clean up the grease and the oil that was in there. We still were collecting tools and getting the tools we needed to get the engines apart. Also, metrology tools. I had to kind of forgot that they don't know that, or most of the class didn't know how to read a micrometer, how to read a caliper, or even in some cases a tape measure. So I had to take a step back with that. Then, thinking that this is kind of a second year higher level CAD course for parametric, I was thinking that I should know how to parametrically model stuff by now, and I can give them tips and tricks on little things. What I found out and what I didn't take into account was kind of the issue with a community college. You have students that are kind of all over the place, and they might have taken the prereq course 2 or 3 years ago. Now they're in that required course trying to finish out their degree, or they just didn't do well in the first course, but they passed and they did it enough. So now in this course, I can't let them kind of go on their own. I got to handhold them a little more. And so that project became a really good failure. But what we discussed was we turned that failure into a success in terms of getting them to understand what failure was. Like, why do we have these failures? Why are we not able to draw these things? if we have these three parts, and that's what I condensed it down to, only a couple parts rather than a bunch of parts of the engine. But if I only have these three parts, how do we assemble these as a team? If you're doing it in India and you're doing it in Germany and you're doing it in the United States, how do we get all that data together and put that together? And so we really kind of worked it as a use case at the beginning, like, hey, remember all this stuff? Now, we got to think about assembly, we got to think about all these things. What went wrong that we can fix now and move forward? So we really sat down and talked about those things and why it was a failure, which became a great lesson in them understanding the importance of making sure we're identifying the parts that come out, making sure that we know how to use a metrology tool before we say, oh yeah, we got that, or making sure that we ask for help when we're trying to draw something, that it's not just that's good enough. It's got to be right every time. So that it can be assembled correctly. So some other failures. I taught a fluid power class. It was one of my favorite classes when I was taking engineering courses, but it had been a long time since taking fluid power. And it's one of those courses, all my other courses I could do pretty much with my eyes shut. I changed a little bit here and there. We had fun in those classes, but this one was a brand new one that I actually had to sit down weeks before, go through the content, make sure I had it right. I had to write all the tests. I had to do make sure I had all the right homework assignments that pertain to what I was wanting out of the outcomes. But what I quickly realized was I'd forgotten how to do basic math. Even though I taught a status course quite a bit, there was times where I kind of blacked out at the chalkboard, if you will, whiteboard. But there was times where I kind of blacked out for a second and kind of went, 2 plus 2 is what again? And so, we had those things where, again, using it as life lessons of, okay, I forget how to do this, or I forget how this equation right here. Give me a second. We're going to reference the book. We're going to reference our material, or an online resource that I know that is trusted, and we're going to figure this out together. And I think what happened was students really clinged on to that's real life. They really understood that, okay, it's not going to be perfect every time. I'm not going to remember everything. And that the person up there teaching is also human and shows a little bit of failure every now and then. But we'd get back on track. I would show them, if you don't know this, how to find that information and where to find it. So as a colleague of mine said, any mistakes are for educational purposes only. And so I would kind of make fun of it and say, hey, if you guys find the mistake, you get 2 extra points. And sometimes I'd be like, that wasn't a mistake. And we'd have an argument back and forth and be fun. But I did enjoy that class. I finally kind of, after teaching it a second time, I was really comfortable with everything. I could go through, I could put in some errors on my own. I can kind of do that back and forth with the students. Be like, is this right? I don't think it is. What do you think? And then have that back and forth with them and then show them the right way. So I said all that to say this. Don't be afraid to fail as a teacher. If they learn something out of that, there's times where you're not going to meet all objectives. There's times where you're not going to meet all the criteria that needs to be met for that. But if they're learning something, if they're getting the things that they need to get to move on to the next level, to become a better, productive employee or person, that's a win. That is a win. And I wish we kind of get out of this. Teachers have to be 100% correct 100% of the time, because I think showing failure, showing that we are human, drives a little more of that diversity, generates creativity. The teachers teach teachers best of showing, hey, I don't quite like how I'm doing this. What do you think? And realizing that failure can be an opportunity at the same time. So, yeah, I please share any failures that you've had as a teacher, as a, putting in some type of CNC project that you realize that, dang, this just took way too much time. But what I learned was time management of projects, thinking about those things. Maybe it's a drafting course, an engineering course where it was just too high level of a concept for that particular course. You needed to back it down. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from each other. Again, teachers teach teachers best. Please leave a comment about maybe a situation that you had. It doesn't have to be current. It can be past. I know some people are kind of scared. I'm a teacher now. I don't want to share that I've had failures. Open up. You might just like what comes out of it and learning. So Appreciate the time. Again, episode 11. I was out last week on vacation. Enjoyed my time with my in-laws down in North Carolina. So have a great day.